Okay, well, here we are again. Welcome to another edition of the channel Drop-In. This again is the Foundation series. Today, we've got a returning guest. It's Dan Kelly from from 360 Insights. But Dan, when you came on before, you were with CR. So maybe you can do a little intro quickly on maybe what happened there and how you now become part of 360 Insights. And welcome back, of course.
Yes, indeed. No, thanks, and always a pleasure to have a chat with you. Thanks for inviting me along again. So for those who don't know who I am or where I came from, as Glenn mentioned, originally was one of the founding partners of a company called Corporate Rewards Limited, who later traded under the name of CR Worldwide, providing incentive services to B2B channel companies, predominantly tech sector, in terms of software, hardware, etc. We had a platform which was excellent, I've got to say. I would say that because it was ours.
It was.
It still is. Yeah, we ain't got rid of it. It still is excellent. Which enabled vendors, predominantly vendors, to engage and incentivize down at a salesperson or sales rep level within their partner base. Had mechanics such as points, leaderboards, gamification, sales claim and verification aspects, etc. So we managed that for about 18 years, and then pre-COVID, we kind of got on that subject already. We were doing really well. Obviously, then we were approached by a company called 360 Insights, based out of North America, and we thought that the time was right, really, for us to increase our expansion plans. So like any kind of small to medium-sized business, you get to a level where you think, how do we grow? How do we break the ceiling, right? And how do we push on further? And you either do that through, private investment or through a kind of trade sale. So we met with the team at 360. We found a lot of great synergies with the companies in terms of the values that we have and share, the vision for where we want to go in the market. And 360, check them out if you haven't checked them out already. They are a company who are going places for sure, and it's great to be part of that journey.
Amazing. What a great story. In fact, actually, we spoke to Heather a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? And relatively similar story. So yeah, testament to you, of course, and to Heather, and also to 360, to seeing these leading figures, leading platforms, looking to the future and building that ecosystem out, which of course you are now an integral part of. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Great story, and as I say, good to have you back. Really enjoyed our chat last time, and this time we're doing it as part of the Foundation series. So as you could have guessed, viewers and listeners, we're talking about incentives and rewards today. Again, something that's been an absolute channel staple for many years. I think we've seen some change over the past few decades. And Dan's here today to kind of give us insight into that, give us a bit of background, and ultimately as well look at where we might be able to place some chips for the coming and foreseeable future. So Dan, yeah, let's dive straight in. Let's talk about where does this all come from then? I think you mentioned 18 years ago, Corporate Rewards. What inspired that? Where did that come from? Why did it start? And what did the incentive and reward market look like back then?
Oh, I wish I could remember. No, it's a long time ago.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, our journey came out of running a lot of events, really. So in this kind of industry, there's a channel. It's all about people and connections. And myself and my kind of other colleagues that were working with at the time, we came from an events background, and we were managing a lot of incentive trips. So presidents clubs, trips off skiing, all the fun stuff. We got into it just because we enjoyed traveling, I think. But really quickly, we realized that to do anything at scale as vendors such as your Microsofts and your Dells, all those huge companies that we work with, the events are one part of it. They're an output of some kind of program or some kind of engagement level with those partners. And still today, people are still running these things on spreadsheets, but they definitely were back then. Or buying tons of gift vouchers and storing them in cupboards and drawers, and all the risk that's associated with that. So we kind of saw the need for automation in that space, and I'd still say that's kind of true today, right? It's everything's moving at hyperscale, and everyone's trying to reach more and more partners and grow, rather than be a linear relationship between vendor, distributor, reseller. As we know, there's more of a matrix of an ecosystem now. So how do you continually keep those people engaged, keep front of mind, and empower them to go and do what they do well, which is why you partner with them, right? To go and sell and generate more leads and generate more revenue. How do you do that at a scale? And the only way to do that is through automation.
Yeah.
And through platforms such as any kind of SaaS related incentive tool. And the other thing that kind of links to that is all of the other activities that vendors are doing within the channel, whether that's marketing or lead generation. You need something to tie those together and to underpin those behaviors and kind of push those behaviors to the fore. So you want to make sure your partners are exemplifying winning behaviors. So of course you're competing with other vendors, so you need to give them an extra hook, and that's where the incentivization kind of comes from.
So I think that's actually, you covered a couple of really good points there, because traditionally, yes, we talked about events previously, and the way that events have become and always were, historically such a massive part of channel, paid for in large by MDF, and then you talk a bit about sales. Let's focus on that for a bit, because again, historically, incentives and rewards always seem to be based around selling the most stuff, didn't they? It was always a numbers game. It was always a revenue thing. If you do this, we'll give you this. We'll give you this if you did it. And I think maybe you can go into a couple of things there then. Historically, around the importance and the prevalence of incentivizing and rewarding sales, and then actually tell us the difference between an incentive and a reward.
Yeah, great kind of points there. So I think the days of just incentivizing or rewarding the end sale are long gone. This isn't something new. So we mentioned behaviors before. You're trying to drive these kind of micro behaviors to get more predictable outcomes. I always kind of talk about that. And I think that if you look at what we look at is the kind of buyer journey and the seller journey, and try and map the incentive gap. The gap between them is the incentive. So whether you're trying to drive more leads into the top of funnel, whether you're trying to get recruitment of partners, get them to execute your marketing campaigns, whatever those behaviors that you're looking to drive are, then that's when you start to look at adding an incentive. And an incentive is the motivation to get someone to do something like you want them to do. So and the reward is very much the carrot at the end. What is exactly going to make them do it, especially salespeople. And I've been a salesperson for years. I'm not being derogatory, but why are you going to do it? You want to do it for incentives, and incentives have changed. Well, it's not just I'm going to reward you if you sell this thing. I'm going to reward you if you get yourself enabled, educated, talk to your customers in a certain way, bring us into a deal at a certain time, update the CRM, all the other aspects that build to that kind of sale. That's what we're trying to drive here in kind of that vendor channel.
So do we kind of look at, obviously, and again, this is a foundation series, so we are going over some fundamentals. So we're looking at incentives being, kind of much more pre-activity, and then the reward coming, almost much more post, much more post after the event, right? So after the thing has happened, we're rewarding traditionally, historically, for selling, right? So it was all about selling. And yes, quite rightly so. You've mentioned about things move into a more behavior-based incentive or behavior-based reward. One of which is selling stuff, but of course there are other things involved that can be incentivized and reward. Was there anything, do you think, in the last 10, 20 years, or even maybe more recent, that kind of, was there a compelling event that switched from just incentivizing and rewarding sales to looking at more behavior-based schemes that reward for different activities and different behaviors?
I'm not sure there's a compelling event that I can put a pin in, so to speak, but I think there's a realization or a waking up of vendors that the rise and the power and the skill sets of a lot of the partners that are out there, that you can't just throw money at something and hope it sticks. So it became more about empowering and enabling people over the last 5 years, 6 years, would you say? And some vendors have been slow to do that. Others was right at the start of it. And as I mentioned before, I think that the kind of globalization and the need to scale at at pace was really the driver. of that. And for us, bringing 2002 we started our company CR, and the internet was very much the thing that is on dial-up and all the rest of it. So the development in technology has allowed that scalability and automation as well. It's driven the journey, giving people 24/7 access to what's expected of them, what they've got to do to achieve, and what they get for it has been key, really.
So, I mean, we always say that in channel, obviously, everything leads to a number, right? The channel survives and thrives on selling as much stuff as possible. And we get that. It's as soon as the end user buys, everyone else wins, right? So a lot of emphasis placed on the partner completing that end sale, the distributor, supporting and facilitating that sale, and then obviously the vendor, who is the ultimate provider of whatever it is that's being sold. Give or take, obviously, added value and managed services, etc. So everything leads to a sale, but what we're talking about now is everything leading to the sale are points at which things can have incentive attributed or reward attributed, right? So whether that's process, operations, pre-sale, marketing, and where I'm going is to ask you for a few more things that can be incentivized on the pathway to achieving that sale.
No, exactly. And there's many things, right? I think kind of rewinding a little bit, I suppose one of the biggest mistakes, and it sounds pretty obvious, is that I see made, is people don't really drill into the why they're going to run an incentive. You get you get a couple of the panic. Oh, it's end of quarter. What we're going to do? We've got some extra cash. Let's run an incentive. You get numbers are down. Let's run an incentive. But why? What is the exact? What are these micro behaviors you're trying to drive? Who specifically you're trying to drive? And then work back from there. So if you need to get more pipeline build, early in the financial year, incentivize some marketing activity. You don't even have to incentivize just salespeople. It could be marketing people. People have TCMA platforms, all different tools at their disposal, and they're not executing the campaigns. So look at the reason why, who you're targeting, and then those little kind of those behaviors to get you and them to where you want to go. So it could be sending out your email campaigns. It could be getting customers to come to an event or a webinar. It could be attendance at your partner summit, whatever those other aspects you feel are going to help you win. Then that's what you should be looking at. I think they say that all builds up to an end sale, and there's multiple people involved in that sale, right? From the customer side and from the seller side. There's pre-sales and technical people. There's RevOps. There's all sorts of people involved in the sale these days and building that solution. You may be partnering with alliance partners yourself. You may be building a solution for that customer. It's not just your software or hardware. So you've got to look at how you build that journey, why you're doing it, and then map the incentive to that. I think that's the key.
Okay, so I'll move back a little bit actually to something you discussed, because as you'll remember, Heather and I spoke about this quite a lot when we were talking MDF, and it's all kind of related. So, and this is the idea of this kind of reactive tactical versus proactive strategic thinking, right? We talked about it in terms of MDF and how for years everything's been quarter on quarter, and that is becoming outdated rapidly, if it's not already outdated, right? Can the same approach be applied here in terms of strategic incentivizing and strategic reward programs that are put in place over much longer periods of time? Because again, we're talking about behavior and somewhat habitual behavior, right? And it takes time to change behaviors, doesn't it? Because you have to get out of one habit before you adopt a new one. And that's not the sort of thing that can happen within a matter of weeks, is it?
No, and that goes back to what we said about incentivizing a closed sale. I mean, that's great. If you want to just push a load of deals that are hanging around, try and get them closed, chuck a bit of cash and incentive. If you actually want to make a behavior change and make a long-term difference to the outcomes, then it's a year-on-year, it's a programmatic approach. A strategic part of your business. It needs to align with your business goals, your visions, the partner business plans. Everything needs to be tied back to the incentive. And I think what I advise is salespeople are short-term focused a lot, because we've got quarterly numbers, business to run on the quarter. Our attention spans are low. Not being rude there, but I'm talking about myself basically.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And you're allowed to, because that's what you spent your career doing very well at.
But I think when you build an incentive, look at breaking it up into quarters, maybe into shorter chunks, but have the long-term vision. So, you know, we mentioned there's different aspects of trading, there's pipeline generation, all these different bits. But at the end of you know, a quarter, maybe there's a big award. Maybe you're doing prize draws every few weeks for people that have made closed deals or whatever you want them to do, because you need to keep that engagement level, that fun factor, you know, really high. But actually, I say, what's the overall business objective? It needs to be programmatic. It needs to kind of be continual beating of the drum. You know, you'll have some early adopters, you'll have some late kind of adopters, right? Some laggards and whatever coming in. So, you know, you need to keep that message on point. You need to keep it regular, and you keep the kind of marketing efforts on top of it. You can't just put one of these reward platforms in place and then go, that's it, hallelujah. That's it. You know, the problem solved.
Yeah. So with that in mind, actually, and we've done a really nice piece on the background there, and we're starting to look at what's happening now and where we've come from and where we are. So, you know, looking at kind of present day, you know, because in the past I think we've seen it all. And by the way, you know, obviously you guys were way ahead of the curve in terms of online digitization, that sort of thing. And I think we've seen a lot of different ways of incentivizing and offering reward, haven't we? You know, in terms of points for prizes, gamification, ski trips, Caribbean, as you know, presidents clubs, and cash, MasterCards and Visas, you know, being loaded up, you know, and actually it's interesting because one that we ran, I think probably about 10 years ago now, some of the reps were earning more from the incentive than they were in their regular monthly salary, you know, just on this loaded MasterCard, which, you know, obviously legislation has come in and, you know, it's kind of changed some of that, shall we say. But what do you see happening now? What are the things that are being requested from partners? What is it that people want to be incentivized with? Is it still points for prizes? Is it still, you know, redeem your points for, you know, a new TV, or is it physical things? Is it events? Is it trips away? Is it cash? Are people still asking for cash or anything else?
I think it is all of the above, and I think the key word to use is choice. People want the choice, right? They don't want Glenn to tell them, you know, here you go, here's your TV, and they go, great, I've got 3 TVs, or you know,
put it in the garage,
you know, whatever it is. Thanks very much, Glenn. I'm going to eBay that. They, you know, so it's giving the people the choice of how they want to be rewarded, either at an individual level or a company level. Because even, you know, pushing incentives onto partners, well, that's not fitting our, you know, our ethos or our business or our ethics or whatever it is. So, you know, a lot of you know, it's the same old story. You ask salespeople what they want, and they'll say cash, but then actually you ask them what they remember, and they don't really remember all the trips and experiences. So I'd say the biggest thing we've seen since, you know, post kind of COVID or post pandemic is the experiences coming back, whether that's attending festivals as a group, you know, getting people together, you know, going off to Reading Festival, VIP. We've done trips to Dubai. I mean, our events kind of business is booming. There's tons of these kind of trips in the pipeline. But then there's always going to be, and this kind of ties back as well to that your point earlier about this kind of longevity of an incentive. There's always going to be the need for, you know, regular, frequent, smaller value incentives and rewards, and probably points are probably the best way of doing that outside of, you know, cash on the card, because you can just save them in the background and you can give away £2, $2 worth of points. You can give away $20 worth of points, depending what your budgets allow and what the outcome is. So having a mix available to the end participant is key, and saying, you know, giving them the power to choose how they want to be rewarded. And yes, maybe there's some TVs and points-based, you know, rewards they can gather in, and Amazon cards or whatever. But then if you want to really have a big splash and get people's focus, get them together, take them bowling, take them to Ibiza, you know, whatever you feel you can afford. And also, you know, just to bring the kind of dampener on it, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, you know, the biggest kind of change in the last 5 years has been the compliance elements. You know, a lot of companies won't allow what they perceive as cash to be given as a reward. Some will do it if it's on a card. You know, definitely, you know, other way, cash into salary and things is a no-no. Some won't allow people to go on trips, and we see a lot of the events having to be tied back and anchored to a business element. So I won't name the customer. We've had one recently where it's a race to one of their technology centres. So, and they get immersion in the technology and training, everything else, and of course they get to go out and do some fun stuff as well as a team. But, you know, that's been a huge change, is the compliance element that's come in. Probably rightly so. We need this control and compliance element, but it has changed the face of incentives within the channel for sure.
So this is really interesting because something we've been obviously working with for quite a long time. I've written around it, commented about it, and this is the power shift of basically from vendors. It's historically power has always really sat with the vendor, isn't it? But in more recent years, we've been seeing that power shift, and more dramatically in the last probably 18 months, that power shift has been right into the partners. Where choice and preference is becoming one of the key drivers in A, the future of channel, and B, the emerging ecosystem movement. And I think what you're describing there supports that notion, right? Because it is coming back to less of a dictation from vendors saying, we want you to sell more, and in order to sell more, we're going to give you this, to much more of I guess, inclusive mentality that talks about, let's see how much better we can be together. Let's see how and where we can, respond to your need rather than just push you with our want. And actually, in order to do that, there's a number of things that we can do to help and support and reward and incentivize what fits your business. Yeah. And if you come to us and tell us, then actually we'll be able to be flexible and respond in such a way that means actually we both get what we want. Is that kind of where you're going, what you're seeing?
Exactly that, Glenn. Big surprise, ask people what they want, right? It's right.
If you really want to know what partners want, why don't you just ask them?
Yeah, right. And it's because some will have their own, all will have their own priorities, their own business plans. They will know their audience, their internal audience better. The bigger partners are running their own incentives they want you to buy into, or they don't want to be you competing with. So ask them what they want. And this is kind of going back to this choice, word that I mentioned earlier. You could offer, if you're a vendor and you've got your compliance team saying, look, there's only a couple of things you can do, fine. We'll go to the partner and say, these are the things that we could help support you with. What's of interest to you? What's going to motivate your salespeople? What's going to align with your business plan or whatever it is? So this is what we're allowed to do. Let's work on a plan together. Because first of all, you're both building the plan together, so you're invested, so you can get more out of it. And secondly, the guy who then gets the email saying you're now part of the incentive feels it's relevant to them. And that's the most important part, that someone's listening to what they've got to say. So, yeah, I think you're spot on.
Really good, really good. Okay, I'll run something past you now that we're kind of experimenting with, and actually it's working really well. So I'll be interested to get your view on it in terms of incentive. And it is rewarding behaviour, and ultimately it is rewarding the sale. But actually, it's bringing sales and marketing departments closer together, because actually and the use of third-party agencies, service providers, because actually what we're doing, and we've been doing it for a couple of pretty major vendors and disties as well, is we're actually offering reward for good behaviour in the form of new opportunity, in the form of qualified sales lead to go sell more. So actually, it's not about points. It's not about it's not about some of the various things that we've discussed today. It's about giving salespeople the opportunity to go sell more and pick up a new commission check as a reward for bringing in a deal. So, for example, we use it across DealReg, where it's kind of like register a deal, and you get an early stage qualified lead to go follow up. So actually, the incentive to bring deals in is rewarded by the opportunity to go and do just that again and again and again. And in doing that, it's bringing various different departments. We've always had this conflict, right, between sales and marketing, and this divide. Well, actually, this is bringing it together, because marketing, using us and or other agencies, are bringing in the leads. They're qualifying them to a certain level. And then when the partner comes in with a deal, that person, that rep within the partner gets rewarded with new opportunities to sell.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a fantastic idea, because I say, there's a lot of pushback on compliance now, giving cash and whatever, and there's the perception of that. But there's also a lot of focus on enabling people to be successful. And I think what you're talking about there is enabling people to be successful in their jobs. It aligns with the partners, goals. They want to drive more revenue and more, clear opportunities to win. So, I think you're right. I think it's a great idea. I think it could work certainly in a certain set of partners and certain situations. But I think the program that goes behind it is the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not just telling our services here, but you need to be able to map that process out, maybe to track it, get the data into the system, get data out of the system, all that piece that goes before. And actually, as I said before, like with the events, it's an output. The end reward, whether it's cash, it's a trip, or it's extra leads to give you more opportunities to earn cash within the business, which is then approved by your business.
Yeah,
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and that's the thing, we're it's an idea, it's something that's working quite well, and we're only kind of one part of it, but we don't have necessarily, that platform to manage it, to set it up, the ongoing reporting, the management of the whole process, the integration with CRM or whatever it might be, which is quite frankly all the stuff that you've got, right?
We should talk.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's do that. No, but I think the other thing to mention here, and I think going forward it's really, really important, and you mentioned, alluded to it earlier in terms of how you became way ahead of the curve 18 years ago with putting this platform together, putting it online at a time when people were struggling to dial in to the internet, right, let alone use it for actual things. And I think that's massively important. But so we've done the past, we've done the current, right? In terms of the future, digitization and obviously the effects of COVID have affected our behavior, have affected our mentality, have affected the way in which we operate, the way we do business, the way we interact and connect with people. Where do you see that going, having come through such a monumental time in history? Where do you see what you're doing, and where do you see the market going in the next few years?
Yeah, if I had a crystal ball.
Yeah, right.
I think,
Okay, yeah. And
I think
you got any lottery numbers tucked away anywhere? That'd be great.
I think we've kind of touched on it earlier. I think the level of automation of kind of processes is the key to this. I think, say, there's a ton of different rewards out there, leads, cash, whatever. There's tons of different stuff. I think if to make these things work, slicker, quicker, better, and to therefore give higher levels of engagement from the end user, you need to give them, almost like spoon feed them. It's easy. You're entering from one place, right? And this is the whole ecosystem bit. You're entering one place. Yep. You're seeing everything you need to see, whether it's your learning management accreditation, your incentives, whatever. So you're making it easy for the participant or the user. And then you're kind of saying all you need to do is your job, and we're going to automate everything else in the background. So yep. log that deal reg or in our CRM or partner portal or wherever you're doing it, and we're going to take care of the rest, right? We're going to run it through our systems, and then we're going to reward you, at the set intervals. So yes, there's going to be some asks of that person, and you've got to remove those barriers to make it easy. I think bringing everything into one place rather than 20 platforms is the key, and then people like us running that kind of automation to make it easy, right? If you go to get on a flight, if you're lucky enough to get on a plane these days, with British Airways, you don't have to then go in and claim your air miles. They just put on the system. Once you put your number in once, then it should just appear on your account. So that's what it's about. I think the future isn't about finding new rewards, unless crypto becomes a big reward. I don't know, but don't want to go there. But it's about making it slicker and quicker and better.
Yeah.
And I think then taking away all that compliance headache, or the worry about I can't take part because of tax, or I'm going to get fired for it, or whatever it is. I think that's the key. And then on the front end of it, it's about giving the vendors and the partner managers and the the guys within the business management and the partners control and consistency about how incentives are run, rather than this kind of spike ad hoc approach to it and money being wasted or left on the table. I think control, consistency, compliance is the kind of way forward.
The 3 C's of incentives and reward.
That's it.
Is a great way to nearly finish, but we can't quite finish yet before we actually just have a little look at the ecosystem. Okay, we've mentioned it a couple of times. It's it's unquestionably the movement that is gathering the most momentum at the moment. Yes, it's been about, and people have been talking about it for at least the last decade. The channel is finally catching up, as is often the case with the channel. We're a little bit behind, right? But no, it certainly is gathering momentum now. So are we going to see multi-level, multi-directional, multi-dimensional, as I'm talking about at the moment, incentive and reward programs that are not only running through that traditional model, as you mentioned earlier, of vendor, disty, partner, but are we talking about running it across and through the ecosystem, where there's going to be multiple partners, multiple vendors, multiple alliance partners, multiple SIs, all part of the ecosystem, becoming part of the same almost atomic network of incentive program. Is that something that you are moving into? Do you see that? Is it a non-event? Where do you sit with that? And is it possible?
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, is it possible? I mean, I think, you know, if we look at the ecosystem as a bunch of personas at the end of the day, you know, and going back to what I said earlier, you know, why you're doing it and who you're doing it for, then yes, it's entirely possible, because the platforms allow us to build those data structures, and whether it's an influencer type partner who's passing you leads over the fence, or whether it's some kind of system integrator building a solution type partner, you map the incentive to those personas types to say, what is the behavior that's going to get the greatest success. And because we're automating all this through platforms, then of course you can do that, and you can have multiple people in that kind of chain of events rewarded for their contribution, in it. So
so we could actually start seeing one incentive across multiple organizations, as opposed to multiple incentives across multiple organizations. So so that it's lots of different individuals, lots of different organizations across the ecosystem are becoming part of one atomic network that is being incentivized and rewarded as they collaborate and work together and succeed together, rather than one incentive per vendor, one incentive per vendor, one incentive per vendor. Is that what you're potentially suggesting? Or again, do you think it's possible?
I think it's possible. I think they say that is a definite a possible future state, right? It's especially with ecosystem orchestration, like say everything coming together, that when you log into a portal platform, you see what we want you to see, so you just see that one part of the journey. So some will see end to end, some will just see one kind of moment in time of what they need to do. But yeah, you could run a program across multiple contributors, should we say, to a sale, to a solution, and people get rewarded for their individual part of that.
Brilliant. Sounds like there's you've been on a terrific journey, Dan. As ever, an absolute pleasure talking to you. Your insights and knowledge of this particular the channel in general, but of this particular topic is second to none. I value your contribution and really enjoy having you here. There's been a great past, and I think we're doing all right at the moment, but the future looks really bright. And I think the future is, as ever, full of opportunity and full of potential. And I thank you for sharing that with us this morning. Dan, how can people get in touch with you? Because I'm sure they're going to want to.
Well, you can look me up on LinkedIn, obviously, the holy grail of place to connect, but also, through 360's www.360insights.com or dkelly@360insights.com.
Amazing. So Dan Kelly, VP Partnerships and Alliances. I don't think we did the full intro earlier, but that's where you are at 360
I've moved roles slightly, moved roles into more Partnerships and Alliances, practicing what we preach now.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Great session. Thanks ever so much for contributing and being second time here on the channel drop-in. This was another episode of the Foundation series. I'm Glenn Robertson at Pure Channels, the channel agency. Although maybe we need to change that to include some kind of ecosystem title now, Dan, who knows? But as ever, great episode. Thanks ever so much. And we'll speak to you again, and I'll speak to listeners and viewers again on the channel drop-in soon. But for today, thanks ever so much. Goodbye.